Hi, and welcome to Google Docs and Cloud Backup. Today we're going to be talking about how to use cloud-based resources to better backup, transfer, or collaborate with your files. We're going to go over a bunch of different services that are available. There are a lot of services out there, some of them free, some of them do come with a cost. What you would want to use is entirely up to you, but we will show several examples and go through working with the tools they provide and talk about different metrics that you would use to rate or consider them. Now, before we get started, I want to show you where we have the resource for this class. If you go to the library's website here at mybpl.org, you can go to Services and then Computers. And from here, go to Computer Classes. And then you'll see Google Docs and Cloud Backup down under the Classes and Materials. This provides a rough outline of what we're going to be covering and what we're going to be talking about today. So if you'd like to print that out or have it as a resource or just read along, that is available. But it is not at all required for what we're going to be doing. So let's go ahead and get started talking about cloud storage. When we're talking about cloud storage, there are a lot of different kinds of things that we can discuss. I'm going to start out talking about an automated system to back up and preserve the files in our computers. That's not the only kind of cloud storage out there. We're going to talk about alternatives and different reasons why you might want to use one or the other, but that's where I'm going to begin. Before I get into that, I want to take just a moment to discuss what the cloud actually is. There's a lot of vague feelings about this or semi-understandings that people have, and I want to explain to you that this is a very general term. In fact, just about all of us have been using cloud storage for decades now because email in itself is a form of cloud storage. When you have an email account, that information is always stored out on the web. It is something that is not attached to your phone or the computer that you're sitting at. It's something that you access using your phone or the computer that you're sitting at, similar to a P.O. box that is not actually in your house, but that is connected to you and is an account that you have. So that's what we're going to have here with the cloud storage, but instead of just being used to store email or attachments that are sent for it, we're going to have a way to copy any kinds of files that we want to a remote location. So if something goes wrong with our computer, we still have a copy of it. That's the basic principle that we're working off of. So as I said, there are different ways to approach this. The first one that I want to talk about is an automated system that will back up everything that you have or everything in certain folders that are important to you on a nightly basis. Now, more and more, there are a lot of services that provide this. Over the last 10 years or so, internet connections have gotten much faster and cloud storage space has become much cheaper. And so the prices of this service have dropped down to the point where normal people in their homes can afford to use it. I'm going to show you a bunch of different options that are out there. You are by no means required to use any of these, but if you want to consider whether they're good for you or not and what features you might want to keep an eye out for, I'm going to go over all of that. Now, in the handout, there is a chart that I copied from one website. Here we're looking at a similar chart. There are a lot of resources available like this on the web. The one in your handout is from a website called CNET, which does a lot of reviews. I'm going to show you something from PC World in just a minute, which is another website that does a lot of objective reviews. And here we have a Wikipedia chart that is provided doing a comparison of features that are available. What you're looking at is you're looking at a service that you would install on your computer. So this is an app if it was on your phone or your tablet, or a program that you would download and install if it's on a desktop computer or a laptop. It would then be set, you would go through the settings in the installation. So you would set it to run on a nightly or bi-nightly or weekly or hourly basis, depending on how frequently you wanted to back everything up, how much work was being done. It would then copy any changed files that you have from your computer to a location on the internet. Notice in that I said changed files. So that means a file that has been updated or created since the last time it was done. Now, the first time you install this program on your computer, it will take a long time to go through and copy everything that is on your computer. If you have a digital camera and you take a lot of pictures, or if you download music or have videos on your computer or a lot of games, all of those things take space and would take a long time to be copied from one location to the other. This is similar to systems we used to use, like having an external backup drive that was simply plugged into our computer. That's still something that you can do. It is still something for sale at most stores. But the downsides of those are you are relying on that device to not break. And if you have any kind of disaster at your location, a fire or a flood, something like that, both of them are likely to be destroyed, both your computer and the backup drive that are attached to it. So they're good for regular, everyday kinds of accidents where things get deleted unintentionally or a problem comes up with the hard drive of your computer. But they're not good with larger scale things, and you don't always know when the external drive is itself broken or having some problems. That's the nice thing about the cloud backup, is that it provides safety across a number of locations, so it's not just in your home, and it's usually a pretty reliable system. Now, understandably, a lot of people will have concerns about security with anything that's copied across the cloud, and there are different gradients of security that are available. Some of these services are extremely secure, where they can't even let you in if you lose your password, so it's very hard to connect to. Others are more moderately secure. Depending on the kind of material you were backing up, you might decide whether or not that was worth the risk for you. For me personally, I feel much more concerned about accidental damage or accidental loss of files than I do about intentional breaking into them. And so for things like my personal pictures and records that I want to keep, I feel comfortable using cloud backup for me, but that is, again, entirely up to you with your material. A little bit of a sidetrack there, but I wanted to make sure you had that information. Now, when we're talking about this system that we're looking at and things that we're installing, we are, as I said, setting it up to back up everything, usually on a nightly basis. And that night, after the first couple of days of copying all of your new files onto the new system, that night there would usually be just a few files that would be copied over. New things that were downloaded to your computer, changes you made to documents or spreadsheets, things along those lines, and the backup typically does not take very long. That being said, you would still usually schedule this to happen late at night, so this is something you'd want to leave your computer on for if you were doing it that way. And if the backup is missed for whatever reason, it would normally happen as soon as possible. Just about all of these systems are going to have a setting, I should say, that will notify you if the backup fails for more than 1 or 2 days. So, for example, Crash Plan we use here at the library, and if the system that I have this backing up misses a backup for 3 days in a row, I receive an email about it, and I know to check that out right away. There are a lot, as you can see here, we're going through them alphabetically. There are a lot of options available. I've personally used Backblaze, Crash Plan, iCloud, and iDrive, and they've all been fine. They've all done the task well and been able to restore files when I wanted. They will offer, however, different services, and we'll look through some of these categories across the top. So, what system do they work on? Can you use them on Windows? Most of us have Windows computers if you're planning on having this on your computer at home. And you'll see yes is the answer for just about everything with Windows. If you're a little bit more advanced or you like to tinker with things like this at home, you can see does it work with Linux? You can see does it work on a Mac computer? And then we get into some of the devices that we would carry around. Does it work on an Android phone or a iOS phone? That's your Apple iPhone. Does it encrypt the storage? That means, can people just read it right through the website, or do you have to download it after requesting a backup first? Almost all of these will say yes as well for encrypted storage. Secure key management is another level of security that you can put in. Zero knowledge is whether the company itself is allowed to unlock your codes. Do they have limits to how many megabytes you have? This is an important one. So, when you are shopping for these, what you want to think about is, do you want to back up a lot of material, or do you want to back up a number of different devices? What I mean by that is, if you have stuff on your phone and stuff on your tablet and stuff on your computer, you can usually get a plan that will allow multiple devices, but if you do that, it will have a limit to how much you can back up without paying extra. If, on the other hand, you have everything on one device, you just have one laptop, but you have a whole lot of movies or a whole lot of pictures, you might be better off with an unlimited megabytes plan like you would see here with Backblaze, where you pay $5.99 or whatever it is a month. I believe it's around the $6 to $8 range for just about all these services. So you pay a set amount per month, but that is for just one device. So this is only for one computer or one phone or one tablet, but you can have as much backed up as you like because it is unlimited. Other ones that have limited megabyte plans, let me go down to one I've worked with before, like iDrive or Infrascale here, they'll have limited megabyte plans, but they'll have an unlimited number of devices in a number of places. So we can go through those and you can find what's right for you. Now, as we look at the plans here, that's just the provider's name. A cloud-hosted network drive, that means somewhere on the internet where you can save things to automatically. Syncing is something we're going to talk about more when we talk about Google Drive in a few minutes, but that's something that you would use if you wanted to be able to have a folder on your computer or your device that automatically synced up with what you're working with. Is there any free online storage available? Is there a maximum per file size limit. You'll see this on a lot of the transferring services that we talk about a little bit later, where you can move files around, but if that one individual file is too large, they will not allow it to go. So if you have an entire 2-hour movie saved to one file, that would often break it. External hard drive support. So if you have an external hard drive plugged in, will it automatically back that up as well? And green hosting refers to how they back things up and energy usage. Server locations, so where are they physically stored? United States or Europe. This can matter as far as transfer times go, as well as any security concerns you might have with where your information is being kept. But if you're wondering, how long will it take to copy this? For example, when you sign up for Backblaze, they ask what region of the United States you're in, and they pick servers that are relatively close to you so that you're not transferring it across the continent. So that's how you would look at a chart of the different services that are available out there. As I mentioned, I've personally used Backblaze, CrashPlan, which we still currently use here at the library, iCloud, and iDrive, and I've had no problems with any of them. The way it works is, again, you install the program on your computer. You would then see that in your system tray here running all the time. And if you wanted to download the files that you have backed up, say you accidentally delete something or you have a problem with your computer and you need to move things to another location, you can log into the websites. You would go to backblaze.com. You would sign into your account. And after you sign in, giving your own email address and password, you would select the files that you want to download. It usually takes them a couple of minutes to prepare them and to remove the encryption, and you would then get a link that you can download it directly to your computer. Some of these programs, iDrive is an example of that, would, instead of allowing you to download things through the website, they would allow small file downloads through the website, but for larger ones, like say you were moving all of your files from one computer to another, you would have to use the app that is already installed on your computer to browse through and download them. That brings me to some of the secondary uses that you can have with these services. The primary use would, of course, be that you want to have this as disaster recovery in case you lose things that are stored on your computer. A secondary use, however, can be a way to access your files remotely. So say you are traveling and you need to pull up a Rolodex file that you have stored on your computer. You could log into a website on the hotel's computer and you could download that file, and then you'd be able to see the phone numbers that you needed or email passwords or whatever it was that you had stored there. So it gives you a remote way to access these files. It's not the most convenient one. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but it does still work. Another very useful tool for this is migration. If you're going from one phone to another or one computer to another. Now, for phones, I will say there are other ways to do migration that might be a little bit smoother. But if you're talking about moving a large number of files, this can be a great way to do that. So say you have 100 gigabytes worth of pictures on your computer and you're buying a new computer and you want to move them from one place to the other. You could copy them to USB drives and then copy them to the new computer and move them back and forth. That would be very tedious and pretty work intensive. You're much better off if you have things backed up to one of these systems already, logging into it on the new computer and choosing to restore all of those files, but in fact, you'd be copying them to a new place. So this can be a very useful tool for not just disaster recovery, but also for data migration and accessing files remotely. Now that we've talked about ways to automate the backups on a daily basis, I'd like to talk about cloud backup systems that we would use as a transfer location. You can see here I have a chart from PC World giving a comparison between some of the major companies out there. One that they left out is Office 365. I think that's a pretty big omission. But it talks about different features that they have, free space that's available, how much you can pay for premium space, file size limits, whether it works on Windows and Mac, whether it works on iPhones, Androids, etc. Some of this information that they provide in this chart is, I believe, out of date. And so I'm going to go to a more current source, but that was the quickest chart that I could find for you there. Now, what we're going to go to is we are going to go take a look at a Gmail account and go from there to working with the Google Drive tools. As I mentioned, there are a lot of services available for that. I can say that here at the library, we use Office 365 and we've been pretty happy with it. But Google Drive is free and it is accessible to a lot of people because Gmail accounts are pretty common and they're also free to make if you want to create a new one. So that's an example that I'm going to use today. So we're first going to talk about how we would use this cloud storage location as a way to transfer and to collaborate and share things with people. And then we'll go into the actual Google Doc tools that are built into it. So here you have a Gmail account. If you don't have one of these, you can go to gmail.com and create one. If you do, you're probably familiar with this already. But even if you haven't used Gmail, it looks like a lot of email addresses out there, so you can see those kinds of standard features. But here in Gmail, on the upper right-hand side, we have this little 3x3 grid that is for the Google apps. When I left-click on that, it opens up a list of some of the more common Google apps. You're probably familiar with YouTube, Google Maps, Calendar is available, Contacts is how you would find all of your email contacts that you have built into this. And they have some other tools like Duo, which is for video calls. Photos we're going to come back to later on. The Play Store is where you would purchase things, whether it's songs, movies, or apps that you might want to use. And then finally, Drive. Drive is what we're going to focus on for today, although as I mentioned, we'll come back to photos a little bit later. When I open up Drive, it's going to go to this location. Now, this is an email address that I and several people here at the library already use, so there are things in this Google Drive account already. If you have been using Gmail for a while, but you've never used Google Drive, this might be completely empty. If you create a new address and you sign into it and then you go to Google Drive, it definitely will be completely empty. So if you get here and you see just an absence of any of these files, that's okay. What we're looking at here is across the top, we have the most recently used items. So these are files that were viewed in the last couple days or the last few things that people checked out, depending on how frequently the account is used. Underneath that, we see a list of all of the other files and folders that make up our Google Drive account. There's a fair amount of stuff here. Your own personal drive might end up having more or less, depending on how much you use it. If you don't like this view, they have view options here in the upper right where I can change it so that everything looks like this and you can see all of the files laid out a little bit more. If you have a smaller number of files, this might be a preferable view for you. It's easier to read everything. They have little preview pictures inside of them. The folders are nicely separated from the files. But if you have a whole lot of them, this could involve a lot of scrolling because they get to be pretty big. So it's entirely up to you what you prefer. So the big center area is where all of the files are stored. This is where we would upload things to from our computer or from our devices, and where we would go to open them up and to work with them. On the left-hand side, we have some of our tools for working with them. Now, for those of you that are a little familiar with this, you might know that you can just drag and drop files to your Google Drive in some browsers. That won't work for all of them, though, so I'm going to show you how to add things to the Google Drive using this New button, because this will always work. When I click on New, it gives me the option of creating a new folder, so that'd be a new way of organizing things there. A new file that I want to upload, so that's browsing my computer and finding the file that I want. A new folder that I want to upload, that's again browsing the computer, but this time selecting an entire folder worth of files. So if you wanted to get all of your documents or all of your pictures or something along those lines, you could choose the entire folder. Or if I wanted to create something new using the Google Docs tool, so either create a new document, a new worksheet, that's a spreadsheet like you would do with Excel, a new slideshow like you would with PowerPoint if you've ever worked with that, and then many more apps that you can work with here, and you can connect even more of them through the Google Play Store. We're not going to focus too much on those today. We are going to use Google Docs and Sheets a little bit later on. So let's do a new file upload. This is browsing the computer and finding something that we want. If I go to the desktop, it might have defaulted to the downloads on your computers. It might have defaulted to the documents, depending on what you used last. But if I go to the desktop, I can choose any file that I want. It doesn't have to be a picture. It can be an executable program. It can be a document, music file, whatever you want. I'm going to choose this little picture that I saved for exactly this purpose, and I'm going to open it. Now, for larger files, it'll take a while. For this one, it happened very quickly. If you had a big group of files, you would see a long list of them that were uploaded here, and it would have a number count at the bottom for how many total were uploaded. We just uploaded one. It tells us one upload complete, and we can see the picture right there. So that was successful. Now, once the file is uploaded here, I can do a lot of different things to it, depending on what kind of file it is. We'll look at documents and spreadsheets later on. You'll be able to see how you can edit those within Google Docs. But for files that you can't make changes to here, you can take a look at them. You can share them with people, rename them. We're going to go through all of those. And you do all of these things by right-clicking, that's the right mouse button, on the file. And you see a lot of choices that you have here. So Preview allows me to look at the file just to see what it looks like. Very cute. Open with allows you to change which kind of program, which app you would use to open up this file. This isn't really applicable with the picture files unless you add some photo editing apps to your Google Drive account. But this is something that you would use a lot with, say, PDFs or other document editors if you want to change things around there. Sharing, we're going to come back to in just a minute. That's how you would collaborate with other people and either allow them to see and download the files or allow them to make changes to them. Adding a shortcut, that's something that you would use if you're saving this locally on your computer. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Move to is shifting something to a different folder. We'll do that one together. Add to start is making this one of your bookmarked files if you want to come back to it frequently. Rename allows you to change the name of the file if you want to give it something more descriptive or more meaningful for you. Viewing the details tells you more information about the files. Managing the versions is a little bit beyond the scope of today's class, but that's something that you would use for archiving situations. Making a copy is what you would do if you want to duplicate a file, perhaps because you wanted to make changes to it, but you want to keep the original as well. To give you an example, maybe you have a resume stored on your Google Drive, but you want to update it while keeping the original in case you don't like the changes that you make. Reporting abuse is what you would do for any illegal or inappropriate or abusive files that were sent to you or shared with you. And then finally, download is what you would use to save it to your computer, and remove is what you would use to delete it from your Google Drive. Now, you might wonder, with the report abuse, how would you get something into your Google Drive and not know what it is? If things are shared with you, we're going to do sharing together in just a moment. You can share files with anybody. You can share them with people that don't have a Google Drive account, that just receive it by email, or that follow it along through a location on the web or through social media. But if you happen to have Google Drive and things are shared with you, they will start appearing in this shared with me location that we have here on the left. So if I sent you a bunch of emails, notifications, sharing files with you, you might not know everything that I have shared with you until you go there. And then if I had sent you something that was spam or that was had a virus in it or some kind of spyware, possibly unknowingly done that, you could report it as an abusive document or a problem, and you would use that tool for that. This is not something that comes up very often. I would not expect you to have to do it, but just in case you're wondering or in case you have any security problems in the future. Anyway, let's go ahead and use the Move To option. So I'm going to move this to one of the folders in the drive. So I'm going to choose today's class. And then when I click Move, there it goes. So now when I double click on today's class, you see a number of files in there: an empty Rolodex, class from July, something from Monday a little while back, and the Beagle Pups file. So I have moved that to another location. You would use this if you start to have a lot of files in your My Drive and you want to organize them in some way so that they are easier to make sense of and track down what you're looking for. I'm going to right click on this again, and I'm going to go with the sharing option. So I want to talk about how this works. So again, sharing is when you want to share the files with other people. You want them to be able to either see them or make changes to them. Two different ways you would do this. Sharing them is if you want to share it directly with a person or a group of people that you have the contact information for. That's when you would use the share button. Get Shareable Link is what you would use if you want to create a link that you can then distribute using social media or email or a website and have a lot of people be able to access it. So if I wanted to post something on the library's Facebook page so that anybody that wanted to sign up for summer reading could follow that link, I would get a shareable link to a form and post it there. If I wanted to email something directly to people that had requested this and had signed up for the email and I have all their addresses, I would choose share. If I was sending something to a relative or a spouse or a friend, I would probably use share. If I was posting something to a website, I would probably use get shareable link. That's the difference between them. Otherwise, they work more or less the same. So I'm going to choose share. And it just has a couple questions that it wants to ask you. Notice it keeps the get link option available there so you can copy a link anytime you want. It wants to know, who do you want to share this with? So I'm going to type in an address. I'm typing in my own email address here. Now, it offers the suggestion because I am in my contacts with this. If this was not an email that was listed in suggestions, you'd simply have to type the whole thing in. Once I click on that, I could add more addresses if I wanted to. I can keep typing more and more addresses or groups if you have groups built into your email account. I'm not going to do that for right now. I'm going to leave it at just mine. Other things you need to decide. On the right-hand side, you have the choice of editor, viewer, or commenter. Viewer would have the fewest permissions available to it. That's somebody that's just allowed to see and save the file. Commenter is allowed to make notes on this, particularly for documents and spreadsheets. They can put little notes like, hey, you might want to change this, you might want to update this, this is a typo that you might want to fix, but they cannot make any changes to the file. And then finally, editor would have full permissions to make any changes or even delete the file if they wanted to. So depending on what you're doing and who you're working with, you might want to choose which of these is appropriate. I'll do viewer for this one. And then finally, do you want to notify people of this file sharing? Usually, yes, you want to let them know that the file is shared with them. You would say, here is, you would give whatever description you wanted. If this was something you were requesting help with, you might send it and say, can you take a look at this list and see if there's anything that I missed? Or can you do a quick read of this and see if there are any changes that I should make? Things like that. In this case, I'm just sharing a picture, so I would indicate that I am sharing a picture. And when I'm ready to go, I click send. And I have now shared that file. And if I go to view details, I can see the location of it, the owner, when it was modified, and I can see it says Bloomingdale Library can view. That is because that is a person that I have shared it with. That happens to be me, but it's showing the owner and somebody else that can view it. It would say can edit if it was somebody else that could edit it. So it indicates the shared information for any file if you go into the information there. Now, if you have the link, if you had generated a link, then you would not know who is viewing it because you'd be making it available to lots of people. So that is how you use this as a storage and a distributing location. If you wanted to get rid of this, you would choose to remove it. If you want to download it, it will ask you, do you want to save this to the computer? Depending on what browser you were using, it would either save it automatically or it will ask you questions like this, and I can choose to save it. And then once I finish saving it, I can open that picture up, and there they are. When I remove the file, it is now out of this folder, but it has gone into the trash location. And I can see I was practicing before, and the files are stored there. You can also see starred location. That's for when we chose to add them to the starred list for things we frequently use. Recent files are ones that have been opened up recently. And then shared with me are things that were sent to me from other people. So that's the storage aspect of Google Drive. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is using the Google Docs tools that are built into the Google Drive storage to create and edit files within here. Finally, I'd like to talk about the tools for online creation that Google Docs provides for you. So as I showed you before, there are a lot of options within the new field. If you go into the Connect More apps, there are a lot of choices out there, but the main ones that people use are the Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. These are ways to create documents, spreadsheets, and slideshows that you can either use entirely on the web and use this as a place to create it and to share them and to edit them or distribute them however you like, or that you can create here and then save to your computer and print up or use however you want there. I'll start out with Google Docs. Click on the arrow, I can create a blank document or one from a template. You will see that all of these, for those of you that are familiar with Microsoft Office, these are like 80% of the functionality that you would get with the Office products. So is this going to be as versatile as Microsoft Word? No, it's not. But it is free as opposed to having to pay for Microsoft Word, and you can access it anywhere, and it is compatible with just about everything as far as opening up in different browsers, opening up on different people's computers. So in a lot of ways, the versatility of it makes up for the lack of certain features. Now, some of you may have taken my Excel classes before. You might know I'm a pretty enthusiastic Excel user. And so do I notice the difference between Google Sheets and Excel? Sure. There are features that I like in the higher end ones that aren't there for Google Sheets or Google Docs, but I still use both of them quite a bit because being able to access it on your phone, being able to access it on any computer is a really big plus. Now, instead of going with the template, which would be a pre-designed format that I would fit information in, I will choose blank document. And you see this just opens up a document ready for me to type. And those of you familiar with word processing, you're probably familiar with a lot of the things that we see here on the left, the undo and redo buttons, the print, format painting, zooming in and out to make things larger, appear larger or smaller. The font size changes to actually change how big they are. The font style, bold, italics, underline, changing the font color, highlighting colors around things, centering, align to the left, align to the right, numbered and bulleted lists, putting in tabs and indents one direction or the other. All of those features work just fine. Throw in some information here so we can make some of these changes. And you see, as I am typing, if you look in the top here, it says it's saving it as I go. That's one nice thing about the cloud options. Everything you do is automatically saved. And as soon as you stop typing, it tells you it was saved to Drive. If your eyes were quick, you might have caught that up there. I'll do it again. Saving. And save to Drive. There we go. So the upside of that is that you never lose your work. You never forget to save and turn the computer off and realize, oh no, I lost all of my work. The downside is if you make any changes, they are automatically recorded and they're automatically there, and it's tough to get anything back from where you might have had it before. A couple other things that I want to show you here. Right now it says Untitled Document, and up here at the top you see that as well. When I click on that and I change the name, it takes a guess as to what the name could be, but I'm going to call this Class Example July. And you see it says in my drive, that's the default location that it is stored at. If I go over to this tab, you can see, there it is, Class Example July. It has a few words typed into it. But if I wanted to move it, I could click the Move button and put it into today's class folder, Move. And it has already been, in just a second, it will have disappeared from here. Yeah, it says it has been moved, so that's good. And there it is, Class Example July. I can also in here star this if I wanted to make this one of my favorites right away. And so now if I go to the starred files, you can see it's in there immediately. Now when I'm done making changes, I simply close this tab. And if I wanted to change them again, I would double click on the file that I want to change. And it opens right up. Now, if I double click on a spreadsheet, you can see what the Excel sheets looks like. Again, very similar to what you might be familiar with if you've used Excel before. So we have all these creation tools. Now I'm going to go back to my drive here so that we can see all of the files that are available. You might be wondering about files that you uploaded. So say you have something that you created in Microsoft Word or in Notepad. If you upload it to here, the first time you open it, it will ask you, what do you want to edit that in? And you would choose Google Docs, and that would allow you to edit it there. Otherwise, you would not be able to make changes to it. You would still be able to store it here, though, even if it is a Microsoft Word file. So I'd encourage you to explore these tools, create different types of files with this, and once you've created them, go ahead and double click on them, go back and make whatever edits you would like. I hope you found this discussion of cloud storage and Google Docs tools helpful. I would encourage you to contact us here at the library if there's any classes you'd like to hear more or less about. We're looking to find as many online ways we can do this as possible, and we're going to try to keep adding more and more classes to you as we go through this. Thank you very much, and hope to talk to you again soon.